Before we get started, I want to get in a quick word about a supporter of the West 4th and Goal podcast this season. Thank you to Diana Donovan of the Holden Agency. Whether you're a young family looking for your first ever home purchase, or maybe the kids have gone off to college and you're looking to downsize, Diana excels at listening to her buyers and sellers' specific needs and customizing a home buying or selling experience just for them. You can find Diana on Facebook by searching at Donovan Dream Home. That's at DONOVAN Dream Home, all one word. Or give her a call at 419-688-9077. Your dream home is waiting. Let Diana get the door for you.
Hey everybody, my name is Kurt Conrad and you're listening to West 4th and Goal, North Central Ohio's first and only high school football podcast. Thanks for joining us again this week. I'm here alongside my co-hosts Noah Jones and Zach Heiser.
Yo.
And we're joined again this week by Amish Thunder himself, David Yoder. Dave, thanks for stopping by. We got the band back together, boys.
You earned yourself a spot start today. We're really excited to have you back.
We got a full house tonight. It's nice to be back off the disabled list as well.
Yeah,
right.
We're glad you're recovered from your dangerous injury.
Yeah.
There was some conversation that maybe it was a Wally Pipp situation, and for you young guys who might not know who Wally Pipp is.
Don't know who that is.
He's the first baseman who lost his job to Lou Gehrig in 1925, and Gehrig went ahead and played the next 2,130, I think.
That was your first year of reporting,
Right,
wasn't it?
yeah, back in the black and white days.
Right.
Nice.
The first 4 episodes this season have been downloaded more than 15,000 times, and I'm not the expert when it comes to that stuff, but to me that seems like a pretty big number. Thunder, you and Zach can speak to that. I mean, it seems like we're doing something right here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime you put an episode out there, the hope is, I guess, when we tried this show that people would enjoy it, and it's become really popular. So thank you guys.
Right, we got another great show in store this week, but before we introduce today's guest, I'd like to thank Andy McIntyre at Two Cousins Pizza for sponsoring the show. As regular listeners know, Two Cousins Pizza is the official pizza of West 4th and Goal. In addition to serving the best pizza in town, Two Cousins has a full menu that includes subs, salads, stromboli, and foldovers, among other things.
We got to get some stromboli one of these weeks.
They're the goat of stromboli. They're so good.
TwoCousinsPizzaCo.com or call 419-522-2211 to place an order, or you can stop by the shop at 103 North Main Street for lunch or dinner. While you're there, be sure to congratulate Andy on his Richland County Men's Golf Association Championship. He won that last week at Oak Tree Golf Club in Ontario. That came on the heels. He was also the Westbrook Country Club champ too. So it's been a good couple of weeks for Andy. He told me last Sunday the only two things he does are he plays golf and he goes to work. So and actually he had to cut out early on Sunday. If you've ever been to the Richland County Men's Golf Association tournament, there's some celebration that goes on afterward, and he couldn't hang around for that. He had to get down to the office. So
He had a need the dough. Huh?
yeah, absolutely. Once again, it's TwoCousinsPizzaCo.com or call 419-522-2211. Two Cousins Pizza, it's the official pizza of West 4th and Goal. Now that we've gotten through all that, it's my great pleasure to introduce this week's guest. He's Clear Fork quarterback and defensive back Jared Schaefer, and we are pretty excited to have him here. Jared, thanks for coming by.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here today.
Oh well, yeah. I don't know how big of an honor it is, but
You don't have to be nice,
Yeah.
man.
I mean, I think it is.
that's cool.
Thank you.
Guys, this is really kind of long overdue. We should have probably had a Clear Fork Jared or one of his teammates up here last year. They were 10-0 last year. They're 4-0 this year. They won 14 straight regular season games. But before we get into football, Jared, I think what's on everybody's mind is has anyone down in the valley seen Sean Christie?
I'm not too sure. I think we had a break-in in a car, but I don't know if it's linked to him or not. So.
And for those of you who don't know or
It's
haven't
a
been
bad
following
week to
this,
steal a car if it's not Sean Christie. Then I tell you what.
Yeah.
for those of you who haven't been following along, I guess if you've been under a rock or sleeping in a cave or something, he's a fugitive who sparked a federal manhunt here in Richland County when he wrecked the truck. Is that what he did? He wrecked the truck and then he abandoned it, or
They've even Richland Source has been reporting that it was a car crash.
Okay.
But I have seen photos and I haven't seen a dent in the car, so
Okay.
I'm not sure what that means.
well, nonetheless, he
Very
he, re-
mysterious.
he,
Yes.
he remains at large. They're still searching for him, and it turns out it's being reported now that Dog the Bounty Hunter is going to get in on the chase. So
Yeah.
it's going to get interesting here in the next few days.
But we just wrote the story about Naked and Afraid, and one of the Naked and Afraid contestants talking about what he should be going through by now.
Right?
So
Is it I mean, what do they expect? Do they think it's going to be a hard go here? I mean, is it?
I don't
He's only
know.
been on the loose for a couple days, right? I mean,
No,
No,
he's
he's been on the loose
for
for
3 months.
3 months.
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
yeah, it's nuts.
Well, at this point, it's a matter of getting him in safe, I think, is the consensus. And then additionally, he's obviously going to race against cold weather in Ohio.
Right. And it's a few schools here locally have called off school the last couple of days on Monday and Tuesday. Madison and Lucas both, I think, were out, and
And St. Mary's Catholic school
Okay.
in Mansfield, but that was because they get their bus, or they get like a third of their school district bussed in from the Lucas and Shelby school districts.
and that's kind of where they think
So-
this guy is.
Yeah, well, I did try and ask, and they just weren't really telling me at that point, but I don't see why they would have closed down the school if he was in, like, Mansfield.
Jared,
So-
you guys were in session, right?
Yeah, we were. We actually went into a code green lockdown, is what we call it.
Okay, what's
Yeah,
that entail?
That sounds pretty good, to be
It's,
honest.
it's where we take precautions. We hear a threat, and we don't know. We're not really sure where the threat is where he's at.
Sure.
So we take precautions. Make sure school's locked up, doors are locked up in classrooms. And everybody's just alert, basically.
Right, and we were talking a little bit off air, and you guys have to, and it's kind of an indictment in the world that we're living in, but you guys have to practice these active shooter situations. I mean, it's got to be kind of scary for you guys, right?
Yeah, we practice these drills at least 2 to 3 times a month, or even, code red lockdowns is, the extreme of the code green. But
So Code Green is the number one.
is the number 2.
Number
and
2.
then code red is like
What's number 1? White?
And Jared, we were talking about it. I'm from a small country high school, and granted, it was a different time, but back then it was not unusual for guys to. A lot of my friends, in fact, they would drive pickup trucks, and they'd have gun racks mounted in the cabs of their pickup trucks, and they'd have shotguns on the, and they brought these to school, and and no one even
In high school.
yeah, and no one batted an eye at that. It was not even a big deal. I mean, it's a completely different world that you guys are growing up in. I mean, what are your thoughts, I guess, on gun control and on all these school shootings? I mean, you guys are kind of on the front lines there.
I think that safe precautions need to be taken on a daily basis. It's a very serious subject, and it needs to be taken very seriously.
Right. And a lot of these school shootings, I mean, it eventually is found out that kids were victims of bullying. I mean, as an athlete, as someone who is looked up to in your school, I mean, do you feel, I guess, like you have to take is there more responsibility, I guess, in preventing that stuff from happening?
Yeah, as kids look up to you, as an athlete, you need to set the tone for how they need to act and how they need to treat other people. I was raised that way, you don't know what somebody's going through. You don't have the right to say anything to them, that will be demeaning, and I've just carried that on throughout my life.
Right. Is there like a protocol, you guys? I mean, if you see it happening, do you have to report it, or is it like Major League Baseball where they kind of police themselves? I guess that could eventually lead to more problems. So I mean,
feel
do you
like
guys
if you
have
throw a pitch at someone who hits a home run and then tosses his bat, you're gonna get in trouble yourself.
Sure. But I mean, do you guys? I mean, if you see something, do you
yeah.
report to authorities or?
We're supposed to report it to anybody that is in charge, such as teachers, administration. It's a zero tolerance policy.
Sure.
Basically.
Sure. Well, that's all pretty deep stuff. Let's talk a little bit of football, I guess. Clear Fork is home to some of the. We're gonna clean this up right here. Clear Fork is The best high school running back that I've ever seen in 20 years at covering high school football was a Clear Fork Colt. His name was Jordan McCune, and he was like a bowling ball. You wouldn't believe it. He was about my height, maybe a little smaller, probably about 5'8", I guess. Weighed what I would say the better part of 225 pounds. He was a hammer, and he would just run over people. And I remember that team. Jordan graduated in 2011, and he went on to a pretty successful career over at Ashland University. That team won a conference championship. Jared, you were probably 10 years old when that happened. I mean, do you remember that team? What are your thoughts on that squad?
Yeah, I remember going to the games as a kid and just getting all excited, to watch this football team go out there. And the first word that comes to my mind is they just dominated.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just every phase of the game, they were just complete. And it was really cool to watch as a kid and wanting to grow up and be like that team.
Sure. And we'll touch on it more later, but they were dominating against schools that were a lot bigger than Clear Fork was back then. I mean, Clear Fork was a Division IV school as it is now, and that was when Clear Fork was still in the Ohio Cardinal Conference, and they were playing the Ashlands and the Mansfield Seniors. I mean, to do it against those guys, that's saying something. What I remember about that
Jared,
season,
they can't hear you nod.
Sorry.
what I remember about that season, I mean, it's always the fans down in Clear Fork are some of the most overzealous, I guess, is a nice way to say it, fans. But there were even more of them that year than usual, and it's always crowded on that hill. I mean, the community support you guys get, Jared. What's that mean to you, and how exciting is it to come out of the onto the Colt Corral on Friday nights?
I mean, it's just great. I mean, the atmosphere that they create is awesome. I mean, we even travel well. A lot of teams, you'll see,
right.
The crowd really doesn't show up, but we usually bring a ton of people to the games, and their support, even when, we've had losing seasons in the past few years, they've really shown up and
right.
still supported.
I think one of the neatest traditions that maybe not every fan knows about is something called the Hill. Now, you nod right away, and you know what I'm talking about. Can you describe to people what about the Hill makes people show up on a Wednesday, modify their chairs to sit properly on it, and then just fill it on Friday nights? Could you tell people about what is known locally as the Hill?
Not only do we fill the stands, but the Hill seems to be packed too. And it's a surreal thing to be practicing on Wednesday, and then you see, cars pull up and you'll see people carrying chairs, to stick up blankets,
claim their spot.
for the bleachers,
Wow.
I mean,
and what we're talking about is like the steep incline coming off the bleachers on the home side, right?
yeah,
And so
on
they
both
start
sides.
filling that right
Yes.
away.
Yeah, I mean, people show up it seems like an hour and a half before the game and just starts filling up even, way before it even starts. It's just a surreal moment.
I said this on another podcast, and I can't remember who it was, but it was another small towner. It might have been from episode 2 no, it wasn't with Clay. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We'll cut that part. I was talking about how important it is and how really cool it is for small community schools to have so much obvious support for their community, and it just makes you want to play better. And I'm sure that seeing them come in on a Wednesday for a Friday game has to really sort of fill you with joy and give you more of a reason to complete a pass or make a good run or win the game in the end.
Yeah, it means a lot to the players. It just shows that, no matter what, this town has our back. They're there for us, and they care a lot about football.
Jared, I think I covered your maybe not your varsity debut, but certainly your varsity quarterbacking debut. It was 2016, I believe, 2 years ago, and Thomas Staub at the time was the quarterback, and Thomas was a great baseball player at Clear Fork too, but he was still playing football then, and you guys were playing Mansfield Senior, and Thomas, it looked like his foot was on backwards. I mean, it was really an awful injury that he suffered. It was grisly, and that was late in the second half, or late in the first half, late in the second quarter. And Jared, you get thrown into the fire, not just as a first-time quarterback, but against a Mansfield Senior team that had some freak show athletes. They had Brian Benson then, and he's a great running back at Findlay now. And then had Jornell Mans was a junior, and Jornell's he's a Big Ten athlete. He was a guy who came on the show for us last year. I mean, what is it like? Not just just getting thrown into the fire. I guess what is that? It's got to be terrifying, right?
Well, I credit Coach Carroll. He all season long he prepared me every week for situations like that.
Sure.
And it really gave me insight to how to handle the situation. And our guys really fought hard that game, and they supported me when I came in. They didn't look at it as a, oh man, Thomas got hurt type of thing. They were like, let's go, do the job. We know you can do it.
And if I'm not mistaken, you guys, it was like 42-31 at halftime of that game. I mean, it was a crazy high-scoring game. And then the only touchdown in the second half you guys scored, you threw a 2-point conversion pass. You get it to a 3-point game. You guys have a chance to tie that game late, and I think you missed a 30-yard field goal. But, I mean, I would imagine as a young guy against a team like that, that's kind of a eye-opening experience. You're thinking maybe, hey, this is it's not too much for me. I guess I can handle it.
Yeah, it really opened my eyes to the world of varsity football. And the guys really had my back throughout the rest of that year. And the coaches did too.
It was I think you guys finished 4-6 that year, if I'm not mistaken. And you were still in the OCC. It's a we touched on it a little bit. It's a big school conference. It's D2s and D3s, and you guys were far and away the smallest program in that conference. You competed a lot of years there towards the tail end, not so much. You guys transitioned to the Mid-Ohio Athletic Conference your junior year last year. And you're playing against schools that are more like-sized, I guess. You're playing against the River Valleys. And, locally you play against Ontario and Gallion, which is nice, and Shelby here next year. Just talk a little bit about that transition. Do you like getting in there? Did you enjoy going against the bigger schools? How'd that work?
Yeah, it was a chance for a fresh start. We left on a bad taste in the OCC, and we came out and we knew that we could handle business, and we ended up doing that. And I think it was a good move for the school because, a lot of the kids, kids would quit or not go back out just because it wasn't as fun as it would be,
Right.
losing all the time or, having a tough job every week, handling athletes. And it was I believe it was a good move.
And I talked to
I was going to ask you, Kurt, how often do teams switch conferences? It seems like we've been talking with Shelby and Clear Fork recently about
it happens more often
than it used to?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. Well, maybe not necessarily. It's just more publicized now. And I did a big series on this not long ago, and
An award-winning series.
yeah. Well, I appreciate you remembering that.
You're welcome, buddy.
What happens though is that one school switches conference, and Ron Desiker, who is the Ohio Cardinal Conference commissioner, gave me a great comment. He said it's like throwing a rock into a lake, and then the ripple effects. I mean, he said a school can leave a conference up along Lake Erie, and it's gonna have an impact on schools down by the Ohio River just because people start shifting around. And it's tough. I mean, North Union, a team that's in the MOAC right now, they're leaving, as far as I know, and Shelby's coming in. I think the MOAC is going to be a 7-team conference, though, and that's not exactly ideal for a lot of different reasons, and that's a conversation for a different time. I don't want to inside baseball you guys to death, but
Well, what does that do as an athlete? How does that make you feel about teams coming in and exiting? Because you're sort of losing rivalries, right? Is it exciting because you get to play new people? Or is it kind of like, oh, well, I really enjoyed playing, like, Shelby, for instance, last year?
Yeah, it is exciting to play newer teams in the conference. But it's also a disappointment as some teams do leave that were solid competition.
Right.
And I talked to Dave Carroll about it, and he was very outspoken about, he kind of wanted to get in the MOAC. He said, it's not fun for high school kids to come out and get their heads kicked in every week. And that's not necessarily what was happening at Clear Fork. I mean, they generally competed, but you lose, and then all of a sudden you get used to losing, and then you say, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And so like Jared said, I mean, some kids get discouraged and they don't want to play anymore. So I think that I can certainly see both sides of the argument, because if you want to, as a player, and it was my mentality as a player, I figured it didn't matter who was. I wanted to compete with whoever it was. It didn't matter who it was. I honestly thought, and maybe it was because I wasn't the smartest player in the world, but I honestly thought that we were going to beat anybody who we played basketball against, and I was genuinely disappointed when we didn't beat everyone. And I would think that the continued struggles, it just wears on you a little bit. Last year you were kind of you and Blake Dinsmore, who was a senior at the time. I think he was a Clear Fork kid. He went to Madison.
Yeah.
He came back to Clear Fork for his senior year. You guys split time at quarterback last year. I think it seemed like last year he was more the number one guy, and you were kind of the relief pitcher. What's that platoon system like? I mean, is it hard to get into a rhythm, or is it something you guys are all comfortable with?
No. I mean, me and Blake were really comfortable with it. It kept us fresh for defense, taking a series
Right.
off. And that helped us out a lot with, like, not getting as tired as you normally would as taking over the full duties. But, we didn't look at it as a competition type thing, where you're trying to outdo the other.
Right.
I think we just went out and, tried to do our job, do our part for the team to help us win.
What were your different skill sets? Like traditionally platoon, it's like you've got a pocket passer and a rusher, or in baseball, of course, or left-handed, right-handed matchups. Did you guys just split time, or did you each have something different that you brought to the table?
I mean, if you would have watched some of the games last year, Blake would just make a play out of anything.
Right.
It seemed like just scramble around and throw something up, and then it'd turn into a great play. I think we both had different skill sets at the time, but I think we pushed each other to improve on those
Sure.
different skill sets as well.
Yeah.
Now, you guys, you go undefeated last year. You're 10-0 for the first time since 1965, I believe. You win 2 games in overtime. You kick a walk-off field goal in another game. I mean, is there a point where, I've covered teams that are snake-bitten, where, all those games go against you. I mean, did you kind of feel like you guys were living a charmed life last year?
Yeah, kind of. We kind of got a nickname, the Comeback Kings, actually.
He's wearing a hoodie.
Yeah.
Comeback Kings.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
How can I get one of those?
Actually, I don't know.
Exclusive.
Limited
Yeah.
edition.
I think it's
Exclusive
just
to
the
the
team.
players, man.
All right.
But yeah, it was a cool season. We ended up sticking it out, and I think that's a credit to a lot of us. We stuck to it. Showed our mental toughness.
Right.
Jared, I think one thing we've noticed is that good teams, especially in small school teams, if you will, the lower divisions, they've played together a long time, typically, but not always. What's your team like? Have you guys played together for several years?
Yeah, we all know each other. We play multiple sports with each other. We're with we're hanging out all the time. And I think that really shows how close we are together. Our team chemistry is really good.
I think back a couple years ago, when Clear Fork had a couple down seasons they weren't used to, right? And I remember somebody telling me, you watch these kids coming on are going to win a couple games. And did you have a point where you guys that's been a goal you guys have worked towards, or has it just been year by year?
In those down years, we knew we were young. We had a lot of young players, inexperience played a factor, and we knew if we stuck to it and stuck together that we could end up making some runs later.
Now it
later
feels
years.
good to watch it pay off, right?
Yes.
So you guys are 10-0 last year. I think you qualify as the number 1 seed to the playoffs. You host a first-round game, and it's a running clock in the second half against Lorraine Clearview. I think it ends up, 44-0, something like that. You guys put it on them. That sets up a rematch with Bellevue, and that's one of the teams that during the regular season you went to overtime with. And this time they got you. It was 21-13 in the regional semifinals. Just take us back to that. I mean, how disheartening was that? I mean, granted, both games were very close, but knowing that they got you when it mattered most, I guess.
Yeah, it was pretty heartbreaking. We thought we could have really went much farther than we had that year, and but looking back on it, we had a great run,
right.
And those seniors, did a really great job of leading us through that,
right.
And it was just a great all-around season.
I know there were a lot of people in Richland County who really wanted to see a regional final matchup between Shelby and Clear Fork. Shelby ended up winning the regional. They lost in the state semifinals to the eventual state champion, Steubenville. But we had hoped. It looked like it was going to be a collision course for a long time. Both teams were 10-0. They were the only 2 undefeated teams in the region.
Could it happen again this year?
Only one team is still undefeated. Shelby lost
right.
this past week, but that seems like a reasonable thing that could happen. Both teams are very good again. I don't know I haven't done enough homework yet to know what the rest of the
See if a
region is like.
one-loss team could make it that far.
Oh, absolutely. It happens all the time. So
See,
But-
Noah?
that brings us to this year, and you're platooning again with Brennan South this year, and it seems like you're more the you're the ace of the staff this time around. I mean, he's kind of the relief pitcher, and I mean, this past week it seemed like you got most of the time. I mean, has the dynamic changed for you guys at all? I mean, is it still kind of similar to what it was last year when you and Blake were doing it?
Yeah, like I said, me and Brendan have been close friends since he was a freshman, I was a sophomore. Playing basketball, we played varsity together, and we've been friends ever since. And like I said with Blake, it really isn't a competition thing. It's more like, just do your job, do your part.
Right.
And I think more with me is like I have more experience, I have more games. The game seems to flow a lot easier for me this year.
Has it slowed down a lot for you? I mean, you always hear guys say that. I mean, I would imagine when you're thrown out there against Mansfield Senior for your very first varsity quarterbacking action, everything's going 1,000 miles an hour. I mean, since then, have things slowed down for you a little bit?
Yeah, it was quite the difference going from JV to varsity after being thrown in there against Mansfield Senior. But yeah, it seems to have slowed down a lot. I've noticed that really since from sophomore year to junior year, and especially junior year to senior year.
What is the difference? Is it just like faster athletes, bigger athletes, stronger athletes, or is it just like more technique-wise everyone is more efficient?
I think more the speed of the game seems to slow down a lot more. As you get older, you get more athletic, and things seem slower than what they were in the past.
Hit that weight room and
Yes.
Some guys sitting in this room could probably spend some time
I
could
don't
use some
know,
time in the
Kurt.
weight room.
I don't know.
I project as a
Rude.
punter. Yeah, full disclosure, I project as a punter.
You guys 4-0 this year. None of your games have been especially close. I mean, you guys have kind of put it on some people. And granted, you played some good teams, and we talked a little bit about that earlier off air. But does this year feel a little different, I guess, than last year when you played in so many of those close games?
I'm not too sure. I think this year we have a lot more. We're spreading the ball around a lot more.
Right.
We have a lot of weapons, and we're using all of them. And it's been working out pretty well.
And one of those guys is Trayvon Trammell, who I mean, when you look at the numbers he puts up, it's just incredible. I mean, how is that a kind of a nice safety valve to have a kid who's that athletic and that dynamic in space that you can kind of rely on?
Yes, he's such an athlete. He's just gifted all around. He can do pretty much anything, and it's great knowing that he's back there beside you, and you can trust him to do just about anything.
Right. And you're not only a football player, you were a very good basketball player as well. You played on a team that won 17 games, I think, last year. You were runner-up in the MOAC. I mean, are you a football player who plays basketball, or a basketball player? I mean, which do you prefer one over the other?
I'd say it's a mix of both.
Right.
I love both sports. I care about one and the other just about the same.
Right. And, I mean, Clear Fork, a lot of people probably don't realize it, but I think Clear Fork is the only school in the area who's won a state championship in baseball and basketball, both since 2000. I mean, I would imagine not a lot of people realize that. Basketball team won it in 2002, Division III. I had the good fortune to cover that game. It was super exciting. And then in 2010, the baseball team won a Division III state championship. When you think of Clear Fork, though, you think of, I mean, at least from where I'm sitting, you think of football. I mean, what do you think of that? I mean, is Clear Fork a basketball school? Is it a football school? Is it a baseball school?
I'd have to say it's a football school. I believe we're a football town, It seems like, we just fill the stands every week for every football game. It doesn't matter. And a lot of people take pride in their football down in the Valley.
Right.
It's like Cleveland, the Cavs win a championship, but it's still a football town.
Sure, absolutely.
Not to compare you guys to the Browns.
Yeah,
You're much better.
And when the Indians win that championship later this fall, it'll still be.
Don't make me cry, Kurt.
Well, with that, we need to take a quick break. But when we come back, we're gonna talk about what happened around the area last week, including Clear Fork's super exciting win over North Union, and then we're gonna look forward to see what's going on this weekend. And when I was down at Clear Fork the other day to make sure Jared could come up and join us, I talked to Dave Carroll, and Dave said Jared's one of the best students that he does a great job in the classroom. So we're gonna give Jared a little pop quiz when we come back. So stick around for that. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're here with Clear Fork's Jared Schaefer, and we've got him a little nervous about the upcoming pop quiz. There's nothing to be concerned about, though. Before that, though, let's go around the area from last week and see what happened. Jared, you can speak to this better than anyone. It was Clear Fork 42, North Union 14, and that game, I didn't cover it. I watched it on TV. It was a lot closer than what the final score indicated. That's a pretty good football team there.
Yeah, they're a very solid football team. They got some good young talent out there. In the first half, we didn't execute as well as we thought we should have, and we finally started to get things clicking and took it upon ourselves to start handling those things, and we ended up blowing it out of the water.
And it was what, 14-14 late in the third quarter or going into the fourth, and you guys pulled away there in the fourth. But I mean, there's probably some anxious moments there. I guess you guys haven't really been in a super close game like that, have you?
No, not yet, but I think we handled it pretty well.
Right. And another big MOAC game, it was Marion Pleasant 44 and Galleon 21. And Noah, take us through that. You were there. We talked a little bit about it. You said, there was never a doubt who was going to win that game, I guess.
Well, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, Pleasant sort of started the game off by knocking the wind out of the sails of Galleon. I know that they were really energetic. I took photos on the Galleon sideline, and it just sort of seemed like a very different atmosphere after the first quarter, and the battle of undefeateds landed in Pleasant's favor.
Yeah, and Galleon is a team that has had some success here recently.
Oh, I think that they're a really good team, and I think that they'll be fine in the conference. I just think one of the things that Coach Dick actually told me after the game was, like, this game was sort of like, even though they lost, he was really proud of the way that they played, because they were, I don't know, I can't remember what the score was at halftime, but they were down by quite a lot. I think they had only scored one touchdown at that point, and they ended up winning the second half. So I think that it sort of showed his athletes that they have the talent and the skill to be competitive in the MOAC.
And we talked about that last week with Alex Becker, the quarterback over at Hillsdale, in one of their playoff games. They just didn't feel like they belonged on the same field with the team that they were playing. And by the time they realized that they were every bit as good as that team, it was too late. And I think it's a situation like that at Galleon right now, because they had struggled for a few years. They got to kind of get that culture back in place where they think, hey, we can play with anybody in the league.
Right.
A third really interesting MOAC game. It was Ontario 28 and Marion Harding 7. Not a lot of people, I think, saw this coming out of Ontario. They are 3-1. They are right in the hunt with you guys in Division 4, Region 14. I mean, you guys are going to see them down the road. I'm sure you haven't prepared for them yet, but I mean, what are your thoughts? I guess, are you surprised at all that they are getting it turned around as quickly as they are?
Yeah, but I think it's a good job by their coaching staff. It's a pretty good turnaround for them, and it's great for the conference.
Another game of interest in that Region 14 at Division 4 was Shelby. Previously unbeaten Shelby went to previously winless Bellevue, a team that you guys, Jared, had played earlier in the year and handled pretty easily. And Bellevue sprung the upset. It was 45-28, and I talked to a lot of people, and they said, Belleville may have been unbeaten, but they don't play like an undefeated or an unbeaten or a winless team. They're physical, they're strong, and you can speak to that. I mean, they're a lot better than their record indicated.
Yeah, they are a lot better than their record indicates.
Right. I went to Millersburg last week. It was West Holmes. It was an Ohio Cardinal Conference game, and I don't know that it's an upset. West Holmes 35 and Mansfield Senior 20. West Holmes is undefeated. Mansfield Senior has a lot of moving parts right now that aren't in place, and they will be sooner here pretty soon.
Millersburg is probably far enough away for you to be able to listen to a West Fourth and Goal podcast.
Yeah. It takes a while to get there, David. You know a little bit about Holmes County, having grown up down there. It's gets a little hilly down there, and it gets a little twisty on the road to Millersburg.
Those are the kind of distances that I'm always terrified of driving home after a football game, because I'm so worried that I'm gonna hit a deer.
Yeah, especially
an Amish kid.
Yeah.
Running out of the cornfield.
Let's not joke about that.
The amount of buggy traffic increases 30 miles, probably 15 miles out of Millersburg. So it's night driving is very interesting in my home country there.
Right on.
Thanks, Amish Thunder.
It was and I talked to some people after the game, and it was like it was like a complete role reversal for those teams. When you think of Mansfield Senior, it's usually quick strike. They can score from anywhere on the field. They have some really good athletes. And West Holmes, when you think of West Holmes, it's line up and get 4 yards at a time running the ball and go very slowly down the field. And it was the exact opposite of that. Mansfield Senior this year with a whole bunch of really big offensive linemen. They're more of a power running team, and they line up sometimes with 2 tight ends, and it's 4 or 5 yards at a time. And West Holmes, they can score from anywhere on the field. They got a ton of athletes, and it was kind of an interesting dynamic. It's the first time I think I've seen that switch in all the years I've covered the OCC. Another big OCC game. It was Lexington 38 and Mount Vernon 0. Lexington won for the first time. I think a lot of people around here were excited for that. I mean,
certainly our former guest, Cade Stover.
Yeah, Cade was he's been on our show a couple of times. He's a super nice guy, and they lost a couple of heartbreakers early in the year, and it was good for him.
Yeah, they could easily be in Ontario's spot right now.
Absolutely.
Where, it's a surprise season from Lexington.
Right, because that first game they lost to Ontario. It was 14-7. Following week they lost by 3 to Shelby, so they could very easily be 3-1, but they
1-0 in the conference.
Yeah,
so.
1-0 in the conference is right.
That's true. That's really all that matters.
Over in the Wayne County Athletic League, it was Hillsdale 42, Northwestern 28. Our guest last week, Alex Becker, he had never beaten Northwestern in his high school career, and the only reason I'm bringing it up is maybe there's no such thing as a West Fourth and Gold podcast jinx. He had a real good game. He rushed for 3 touchdowns. He threw for 2. And again, full disclosure, Alex is my nephew, so we're super proud of what he's accomplished over there. Another big game, it was Lucas 34, Troy Christian 28. Lucas is an independent school, which means they have to travel all over the state to find games, and they were down just north of Dayton to play Troy Christian. That was a Troy Christian team that was undefeated coming in, and I think Lucas fell behind early. Jeb Grover had another monster night, which comes as no surprise to anyone who's seen Jeb Grover play here the last few years. So I suspect that I think Lucas actually plays its next 4 games at home. They have like 7 home games this year, just one of those scheduling quirks. But,
have they lost?
They lost once. They lost to Northmore at Northmore the week before. So they are 3-1, but they are one of those teams that are sitting in a good spot in terms of playoff.
What does that mean
bracket.
as an independent team when it comes to?
Well, that's that kind of dovetails into what we were talking about with conferences.
I don't want to open up.
Right. I know what you say, but if you don't play in a conference, I mean, Lucas is a member of the Mid Buckeye. They don't have enough teams that field football teams, or they don't have enough schools that field football teams. So there is no Mid Buckeye Conference football championship. So they have to travel to anyone who also is independent to find to play games. They're playing a Columbus City League school this week, Columbus Centennial, I think, which is a Division III school, and Lucas is a Division VII, and Lucas beat them last year. But that's a pretty significant difference in size, and I think that if Scott Spittler had his way, he probably wouldn't be playing a school that's that much bigger. That'll do it for last week. Let's look ahead to this week. Jared, you and the Colts are at Buckeye Valley. That was a walk-off win for the Colts last year. You guys kicked a field goal on the final play of the game?
Yeah, that was a wild game. Just all around. Buckeye Valley gave us all we could handle in that game, and we stuck it out in the end and ended up pulling it off.
And what do the Barons do well? Is it the Barons? Are they the Buckeye Valley Barons? I think they are.
Yeah, they are.
What do they do well? What concerns you without giving away too much of the game plan? I guess what concerns you this week?
They have a lot of good returning talent. I think their style of play is different than last year, but as far as I've seen, they've executed pretty well on offense and defense. So. Right.
Another big MOAC game this week. Ontario is at North Union. North Union suffered their first loss at Clear Fork last week. And like we said, that's a very good football team. They have a running back who is. I don't know. You got a good look at him last week, but for everything I've heard, he's as good as anyone in the conference. His name escapes me right now, but he's only a sophomore. He's going to be around for a while. Was he as good as advertised?
Yeah, he's very solid, and he's pretty young too.
Yeah.
He gave us some troubles in that game, and we ended up getting him later in the game, but and stopping him more. But he's very talented, and it'll be exciting to see what he can do later.
Right. Worcester is at Lexington when we shift to the Ohio Cardinal Conference. Worcester put it on Madison last week. They are 2-2. Lex is 1-3. We talked a little bit about that, but that's a chance. And Zach, you said it. I mean, despite what happened in the first 3 games of the year, Lexington is sitting at the top of the conference right now, and it's a good place
Fresh
to be
start.
going into week
Yep.
2. Maple Heights is at Mansfield Senior because the OCC only has 7 teams. Every team has to play 4 non-conference games, and it's staggered throughout the year. This is Mansfield Senior's turn. They opened conference play last week, and then they're back to non-conference this week. They're playing a Maple Heights team who is 4-0, a really, really talented team. They are a Division II team. As disappointing as the loss was last week for Senior High, if they knock off an undefeated Division II team, that's gonna deliver a wealth of computer points, and that'll put them right back in the hunt. And actually, Senior High, if the playoffs started this weekend, Senior High would be in as a number 8 seed. If they win this week, and it's at home, it's at Arlen Field, I suspect they're going to jump up pretty high in the regional standings. The Tigers went up to Maple Heights last year and beat them. It's a very good game. Jornell Mans had a huge game. Seems like Senior High is still establishing its identity. So I think they'll learn a lot about themselves this week. Another MOAC game, Mount Vernon is at Ashland. We haven't talked a lot about Ashland this year. They are 3-1. They're always very talented. Mount Vernon is coming off a pretty one-sided loss at Lex, so it should be interesting. I mean, Ashland has another new quarterback. They break in a new quarterback, it seems like, every year, and every year that quarterback seems to throw for 3,000 yards, and I think Mitch Heilman is no different this year, so it'll be exciting to see what happens there.
Is Grant going to cover that game since it's Mount Vernon?
I believe, I'm not sure what the coverage schedule looked like. Grant Peppers is our Knox Pages reporter, and he might be making his way over to Community Stadium in Ashland. A really interesting game, and one that I'm going to on Friday. Shelby, off that loss last week to Bellevue, was at Norwalk. Norwalk is 3-1. Both teams are 3-1. Norwalk, they beat Mansfield Senior in the opener. They got beat by a Wayne County League school in week 2, and they have bounced back here. They have one of the top running backs in the area. It'll be interesting, I think, to see how Shelby responds after a loss. I mean, generally, when those things happen, that kind of serves as a wake-up call, and you get things worked out. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Shelby's going to go up there and run away against a very good Norwalk team. In the Northern 10, Colonel Crawford is at Winford, 2 Crawford County traditional rivals. Both teams are 3-1. Both teams are in Division 6, Region 22, I believe. Crawford right now is 6th in the region. Winford is 8th. So there's a bunch of computer points on the line there. The winner is going to not only put himself in a good spot in terms of the N10, the conference chase, but they're going to put themselves in a real solid spot in terms of the playoff picture. And then over in Ashland County in the Firelands Conference, Mapleton is 3-1. They're at Crestview, which is 2-2. And that Mapleton team, I saw them in their opener. They're a pretty talented team. It's kind of a high-octane passing offense. So and Crestview traditionally plays very good defense. So it's kind of it's going to be a battle of wills over outside Olivesburg. That's going to do it for this week's schedule. As promised, it's pop quiz time for Jared. We're going to quiz Jared on the history of Clear Fork football. When I was down at Clear Fork the other day, I was told that Jared was a very good student. So we'll see. We'll test his knowledge of Clear Fork football.
What about us? Do we get to answer as well?
Absolutely. You
All
guys jump in and see what we can do.
We don't know anything, by the way. So
Clear
looking to
Fork,
pull off the upset.
Clear Fork is the most tradition-rich program in Richland County. They've been to the playoffs more than any other school in the county. And first question, how many all-time playoff appearances for the Colts? Zach, what do you think?
All-time, 30.
Lower. David?
I'm going to go 27.
Lower. Noah.
15.
Lower.
Wow.
Jared, what do you think?
I'll go with 12.
12, close. 13. The Colts have been to the playoffs 13 times.
So I win that round, right?
I think it's if we're playing the Price is Right game, it's the closest without going over. So Jared wins.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I don't know how to.
I was way off. 30.
Math is hard.
The
Thought they
playoffs
were a football school.
the
Minus
playoffs
2
started in
points for Noah.
1972, so it's I mean, to be there 30 times would have been something else. So, Clear Fork most recently was in the playoff last year. Anyone venture a guess Clear Fork's first playoff appearance? What year was Clear Fork's first playoff appearance? And again, the OHSAA playoff started in 1972.
How about 1988?
Correct, right out
Oh!
right off the bat. Clear Fork qualified in '88. They beat Wellington in the first round, then they lost a backyard rival.
It was the year I was born. That's why I
Loudonville.
guessed.
Well, there you go.
A special year.
All-time playoff record. How about that? They've been there 13 times, so they have 13 losses. Any idea how many playoff victories in all those years Clear Fork has? We'll start with David this time.
I'm going to go with 7.
Close. Noah.
9.
Close. Jared.
8.
Nope. Zach, how about you?
Oh, man. What? I don't remember the question. 4.
Closest without going over is Zach.
Oh, man.
The Colts are 5-13 all time in the playoffs. They obviously last year they won in the first round. They won it the first round in 2010 too. Was that really good OCC championship team? They beat a Richland County rival. They beat Ontario in the first round that year. And then they lost to Genoa in a game that I covered, and it was wildly disappointing because I really thought that was a Clear Fork team that could challenge for a regional championship. Question number 3. In the playoffs, you're seeded from 1 to 8 now. When the playoffs first started, it was 1 to 4, or it was actually just the regional champion each region sent one team. But again, we're getting inside baseball. How many times has Clear Fork been a number 1 seed during its 13 playoff appearances? How many times has it qualified as a number 1 seed?
Noah?
Let's go with 4.
4 is correct. They were a number 1 seed in 88 and 89, 2010, and again last year in 2017. And that number could potentially go up by 1 this year if the Colts continue to do things the way
Pressure's
they have.
on now, Jared. Pressure's on.
Sorry,
now.
Jared. We just know all this, so we're not even giving you a chance.
I know.
On fire. It's
All right,
amazing.
from playoffs now we go to the conference. Clear Fork has won conference championships in 4 different conferences. Can anyone name all 4 of them?
This one goes to Jared first.
Jared, fire away.
Oh man.
Your head coach won a conference championship in this league in I think 1979.
Are you asking for the league?
Yeah.
Name? The Johnny Appleseed Conference?
That's correct. That's one. After the Johnny Appleseed, they were in a conference that included Loudonville and Triway and Black River and I think Medina Buckeye. Any guesses on what that conference was? They also won conference championships in this conference, 5 of them.
Man, I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know. I can't name it.
You're a guy from around here. Any guesses?
I don't even know what a conference is.
David, no?
I would guess it's something called the Mohican, but I don't know.
That is absolutely right. They were in the Mohican
there you
area
go.
Mohican area conference.
We
They were in
Tropic Thunder.
Amish Thunder.
Wrong one.
Amish
Wrong.
Thunder.
And then, of course, we talked a little bit about it. They won an OCC championship in 2010, and then last year they won the MOAC championship. Last question. Clear Fork was 10-0 last year for the first time in a very long time. Does anyone know and I think it may have come up earlier. Does anyone know the last time the Colts were 10-0? Jared.
1965.
That's it. That's going to do it for our quiz, and I think that's going to
Too bad
wrap.
it was before the playoffs started.
Yeah, absolutely. It would have been interesting to see how that played out had it been a few years later. Coincidentally, Clear Fork was 9-0-1, so they were unbeaten, but they had a tie 2 years in 63 and 66. And another one. This is a bonus question. We'll see what you guys can do. Dave Carroll, Clear Fork's coach, has led 3 different schools now to undefeated regular seasons. Obviously, Clear Fork last year. Does anybody know the other 2?
Jared's nodding, so we'll go to him.
Jared, fire away.
I believe it was Urbana,
Urbana is one of them in 2002.
and I'm gonna go with Danville.
Danville is correct in
Wow.
1994. So
Nicely done, Jared. I think Jared wins.
yeah, Jared, and rightfully, I mean, he
Rightfully
probably
so.
ought to.
Yeah.
And you got the question about your coach right, so it's the
So when
Pick
he
the right
listens,
knowledge.
He'll smile for sure.
Right. Well, that's gonna wrap it up here for another edition of West Fourth and Goal. We certainly appreciate Jared for stopping by.
thanks
and,
for putting up with us.
absolutely, and
Thanks for laughing at my jokes.
and tune in again next week. So until then, so long.
Nailed it, guys. Great job.